Welcome in, Spare Time Bowling Show. Steve Sparky FIfer, 1250 AM The Fan in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our guy, $2 Phil Brylow. Follow him on Twitter at Brew City Bowling. Dwight Albright here from the Spare Time Pro Shop in New Berlin. Follow him on Twitter at Dewey300. And, of course, being joined now by special guest. He just won the Lucky Larsen Masters Tournament. He is A.J. Johnson and just announced going to be having a baby boy. How about it, AJ? Congratulations, man.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. What a crazy whirlwind of a few weeks. Going over to Sweden, a place I've been to before and have bowled well at, to come away there with the first title. I'm still trying to put it in words, still trying to figure out, how to soak it all in, all that good stuff. I'm on the side of, all the things I've done prior. It feels like I've already done it before, and so it's just, kind of adding another one to the resume. But also, with it being, is the amount of years that I put into this, the hard work, and the ups and downs, and the dark times, the contemplating on whether or not I even still wanted to continue bowling for a living, all that comes up and goes into play, when I start thinking about this. And then, we have the last opportunity of the season to win a title, and that's when it happens. It's just pretty surreal. And then to add on top of that, it's something that's probably, even more important, way more important, finding out that Allie and I are going to be parents. It just, life has, I said it in my post, life and, the man above, just, they have weird ways of, working things out, and, putting you in positions and giving you things when you need them the most. And, I think this is huge. I'm super excited. I was so happy when I found out that it was a boy. First and foremost, I wanted a healthy baby.
Right.
Didn't matter either way, but once we knew, we went to a couple ultrasounds, and doctors told us that baby was picture perfect and everything looked great. And then to find out it was a boy, I was over ecstatic. I'm the last male in my family, so I had a lot of pressure on me to get the name. So yeah, it's crazy. We found out right before the Lucy doubles. So we've been keeping it a secret for a while, more so on Allie's end. I was always the one like, hey, you want to start telling people? I'm starting to get a little excited for it or whatever. But she's like, no, I want to make sure everything is good and we're doing, all the right things and make sure there's a heartbeat and all that good stuff.
Right.
So, we found out right before the Lucy, kind of kept it a secret. And then about 2 weeks or so before Sweden, we went to a few doctor's appointments, met the doctor, did ultrasounds and all that good stuff. So then we started telling people, and we told my parents right before we went over to Sweden, and we told them that they had to keep it a secret from my sister for the entire time. So that wasn't
easy for your mom. There's no way.
Oh yeah. Especially with, going to Mason's football games and, going over to see Juliana, and just the time, my family's all really close. So we spend a lot of time together. We all support one another and everything. So they're over there quite often. So for them to keep that a secret was pretty cool. Cause my sister was not very happy with me that she found out that she was one of the last ones of the family to find out. So
AJ, I got a quick story for you here. I'm gonna get to bowling. So had 2 older kids, right? And then we had what is now the 7-year-old. So the second child, we tell the kids, okay, we're having a baby, blah, 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 all that stuff. We're like, now don't tell anybody. We hadn't told our parents yet. Nobody knew but the kids. And a buddy of mine who I used to work with, Rami Makloff, who was out in Sacramento, Minnesota, but at this point he was here, he would always go out drinking or whatever else. He lived in Kenosha. And instead of driving back to Kenosha, whatever, he would just come over to our place over here in West Dallas and sleep on our couch or whatever the case may be. So I'm at the radio station doing our Brewer post-game show. He goes, hey, I'm a crash over by you guys tonight. And I was like, that's fine. My girl's like, yeah, that's fine. Come on over. So he comes over, he goes into the boys' bedrooms. They had bunk beds. He like falls back on the youngest bunk bed, and he's sitting there playing video games. He's like, "Hey, did you hear mommy's pregnant?" And my buddy apparently sat straight up in the bed, looked out into the living room, and she starts laughing. And she goes, "Yes." He goes, "Holy crap!" So I got home. He runs to the door, gives me a hug. He's like, "I never got so sober so quick in my life when I heard that." And he knew before our parents, nobody else knew. And I was like, "Dude, you can't say anything to anybody because you're the first person to know outside of the kids." So congratulations. Now, the next one, if you have a next one, good luck keeping it a secret from everybody. Once your son knows.
Oh, I know. It's going to be so tough. And I actually thought, so I hadn't told my grandfather, and he couldn't have been any more excited because, his name is carried on and everything. So I hadn't told him yet. And when we told my sister and my niece and nephew, my niece, who's 8, she has no care in the world. She just lets it fly. And she can be kind of a buttheaded sometimes. And I was like, I promise you, I go, if you tell Big Pop in the morning when he picks you up for school, there will be 0 Christmas presents under the tree for you here. And she was like, "What? You can't do that." I said, "Oh, watch me."
That's beautiful. So Allie tells you right before the Lucy, end of July, beginning of September, you're flying to the Lucky Larsen. Did that time period, what changed did anything change in the mental outlook going into a PBA tournament? Because, okay, the first one you might be kind of shocked and happy and everything else. And you always usually do pretty well at the Lucy and with your partner, Aaron McCarthy. And all of a sudden, you got this different kind of responsibility sitting on your shoulders going in the Lucky Larsen. Did in a different format on top of it, those little 6-game blocks. Did anything change in the mental outlook going into the tournament itself?
Looking back I would say, once we found out, like when we first found out about everything, I was still kind of in that, all right, well, we have the tests. It's like, okay, it's starting to get a little real. But then it was right before the Lucy when we did the ultrasounds. I was like, all right, well, there's definitely something in there. So this is about as real as it gets. So it was kind of hard before the Lucy because, that was when we first found out. And, we were really keeping it a secret from everybody and not telling anyone. And, people are coming up to Allie at the Lucy asking her if she wants to drink. And so like, it was just, crazy turn of events and everything. But yeah, before the Lucky Larsen, when everything came real, it was like, things are different now. Like I have a whole new purpose. I have a whole new reason for doing this. And, my nephew was around for a long time when I started bowling. He was born when I was still in college, so he got to see a lot of the majority of what I was doing. So, but I think it's different when it's your own. I've been working really hard at trying to fix a lot of things mentally, my approach at it, during the heat of competition and whatnot. And through the tournament, it wasn't pretty. If Allie was sitting right next to me, she would look at you and go, "Yeah, she goes, it was not pretty to get there." I vented to her. She got mad at me, because I got mad at myself and I was bowling relatively good, but I was just mad at myself for causing, bad shots or things when I knew what I had in a certain game, or I knew what I had, bowling in that block. So it definitely wasn't pretty to get there, but I just kept reminding myself, like throughout the tournament, like you have a whole new purpose. You have, a reason to just keep fighting. And, whenever your son or daughter, because at that point we didn't know what we were having, what is they going to say, about dad, looking back at, what he went through, did dad keep fighting? Did he keep going? Did he keep doing everything? So it's given me a whole new outlook, a new purpose. And I think, things are just going to continue to get better, going forward.
We're going to go back then a little ways. And first off, congratulations so much on your first win and getting the monkey off your back. one of the greatest things I got a chance to do was call a lot of your shows with Phil when you used to bowl Phil's, what was it called? The Midwest
You challenge tournaments.
I was brought on for the color. And I always said on the shows that watch this AJ Johnson kid. He's going to end up being a pro someday. So that was the real cool thing for me, is watching your shows and calling your game. When did you know, AJ, that you were ready for tour?
Obviously I owe a lot of thanks to Phil in the tournaments that he ran when I was younger, giving all of us the opportunity to bowl many times. And then, sometimes even bowling on, TV. We got early experience to that not a lot of kids get exposure to. So Phil, I appreciate that. And the hard work that you guys did to give us those tournaments. I had a lot of success, at every level: youth, high school, college, regional. So I like, it was always those stepping stones. And I think the one that I always look back at as to, like, what I think I'm going to make this a career, was when I made the Masters show as a senior in college. I got to bowl that event, being a part of Team USA. And, I went there with one of my college teammates who also bowled the event as well. And my father as well. He came up there with us. And going through that tournament, winning all the matches, going undefeated in that bracket is extremely hard to do. And being the 1 seed, after bowling, Belmo the night before and beating him to get the 1 seed, now I got to bowl him to win the whole darn thing in one game. So that whole event and that time, pretty much proved to me that this was what I was going to do for a career. And everyone around me in my circle, told me, yeah, this is the avenue we need to go. But hey, by the way, you got class at 9 a.m. Monday morning, so let's get back and finish school, and then we'll figure it out. But after I graduated, the day of my graduation, that night, I actually flew to my first PBA event as a member. Actually, I was not a member yet. I got a commissioner's exemption to bowl it, because I was becoming a member. But I graduated, I went to dinner with family, and then I hopped on the plane and flew to Oklahoma to bowl my first event. So it's pretty cool. And I think that was when, I'm like, yep, this is it. This is what we're doing.
Okay. So when you get to tour and you're young and you're out of college and so forth, who are the guys that kind of take you under their wings a little bit and kind of show you the ropes early on here that's been instrumental for you?
Yeah, very fortunately, I got to been a part of Team USA for a long time. So I've gotten to be around some of those guys that have been around for, a lot longer than I am. I don't mean to age them at all, but
oh, they're old. It's okay.
Yeah. But being around Tommy, Chris Barnes, guys that kind of took me when I first made the team, I think I was a freshman. Yeah, I was a freshman in college the first time I made Team USA. So,
wow.
Kind of learning, learning from them. And whenever I would go to camp, when those guys were on the team, I would just, go about the business we had to do, and I would keep quiet and listen. Pick up on things that they're doing, what they're talking about, and how they see things. And so I was very attentive when I was I had those times with those guys. But then you get out on tour, and one of my best friends that we still room together to this day is Marshall Kent.
Oh,
he actually bowled on tour. He started bowling on tour a year before me. So we kind of bounced ideas back off of one another and helped each other out, whenever necessary early on. But yeah, I would say, when I was younger, looking up to, Chris Barnes and Tommy Jones and Bill O'Neill. I had a lot of great conversations with Bill O'Neill when I was on the team, with Team USA, and put a lot of things into perspective. And Bill kind of related to, fast forwarding to where I am now, he kind of related to what I went through in that, 7 years without winning, because he went through a similar time frame. So having those kind of mentors and having those guys that are now Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers, was pretty special. And I still look back at those. I still revert back to some of the things that were said and the conversations had. So it's definitely helped a lot.
So when Sean Rash won Bowler of the Year back in the early 2010s, he said, I could win with any bowling ball in my hand, any bowling ball company. I'll make great balls. You were with Storm, then you're with Ebonite, now you're with Motive. Is that still true today? Like you guys, like you've been through all the companies, you know all the different equipment, that kind of thing. What's the difference between having Motive in your hand and having Storm in your hand for you this year? Was that a main reason why you won? And it's a question like a lot of people that are in the know it's the answer, but people are new to the sport. Does it really matter what bowling ball you have in your hand, or what has Motive done that's got you over the top?
Sure. That's a great question. I feel like at the highest level of any sport, the athlete can utilize whatever is at their discretion to get the job done. If you look at golf, I'm a big golf fan. I play it a lot, or at least try to play it a lot. And, I follow it quite a bit. Sometimes Allie gets mad at me when I'm watching tournaments and stuff, and I've got it up on my phone. So, I feel like if you were to take any of the golf clubs that are in professional golf, the companies that make clubs for those guys, at some point in time, those guys are going to figure out how to win with those clubs. That's what bowling balls are for us. They're different. They're tools for us to use when bowling. And at our level, I feel like no matter what company any of the guys are with, that they're going to figure it out. Like I said earlier, I bowled at a lot of different levels, and at every different level, I was using a lot of different bowling balls, and had a lot of success with them always up until this point. But I can't say enough great things about everyone at Motive. The Wilbur family, Scott Hewitt, Brett Spangler, from the top to the bottom. I mean, those guys are some of the most amazing people in our sport. They're some of the most generous people in our sport. And they, from day one, they have believed in me and given me the avenue to, whatever I needed, to get better. They never say no to their players. They listen to their players. And when we give them feedback on what we're seeing on the lanes, and then Brett facilitates all that. I don't think Brett gets enough credit when we're bowling on tour for the eyes that he has at seeing what guys are doing on the lanes, whether or not we're on the right side of it or the wrong side of it, and getting us to stay ahead of, the transition and also who we're following.
Along those lines, the 3 gutter balls in the Cheetah Championship going into the commercial break, if you don't have Brett Spangler, do you come back and win that match against Buttroff?
I don't know. I don't know that I would, because I came over at that break and I stood next to Brett, and Brett looked like he had no worry in what was going on. And I came back and, I would be like, I was furious. I'm like, what are you doing, AJ? Like, what is going on? You both so well on this, and you're just making stupid shots. And Brett kind of got me, back circled around, and he goes, hey, the way I see it, you got a way to make a crazy story out of this. And he goes, the way I see it is if it stays on the lane, it pretty much is going to strike. So he goes, let's go make a story out of this. And he goes, just a whole new game. You just make the next grade shots, and what'll happen. And without him being able to kind of bring me back down for a minute and get me to focus back in on that, I don't know that I win that game. I don't know that, people get to see that comeback on TV, or in person. And I think when I made the switch to Motive, I had never thrown a Motive ball in my career. And I had gone and tested some bowling balls, and I was pleasantly surprised in what I saw. It was a little bit different motion, but they did something that fit my eye really well. And the one thing that I did like with their stuff that I hadn't seen was, for whatever reason, they keep the pins a little bit lower. So some other bowling balls, you know, in the past where I've, you know, they go through the pins kind of fly and they go up, you know, kind of over the top or fly around a lot. The Motive stuff keeps the pins a little bit lower and they make contact with one another a little bit more. So that was nice to see. You know, hopefully when you see that, that's kind of tells you, you know what, hopefully I get a little better carry out of that. But when I first signed with them, you know, I had a couple weeks of transition period, you know, where I was learning what the balls were doing on tour. And then my third week with their company, I made a show, and it was I'm trying to think the best word to use. It was a you know, kind of a relief of seeing like how quickly I was able to adapt, you know, to that change. And, you know, without the help from Brett and Nick Parr and the Wilbers and trying to figure out what, you know, which ones work best, layouts and things like that so quickly. I don't know that I have that. And then, you know, there's been so many people that have come up to me and said, you know, the Motive balls are all great for you. This stuff is good, you know, for what you like to do and how you like to see the lanes. You know, Rod Ross was one of those guys that he thought it was just going to be, you know, one of the best things I had done so far. And it turned out, you know, within the first few years, I had started having a lot of success with the Motive stuff, and they just continue to make better bowling balls. They continue to roll out great, you know, great covers and core combinations. COVID actually helped Motive in a way. They were able to figure out the tricolor covers, and then also they were able to do a lot more research on how to make the shinier covers a little bit better in the oil. And I think it's transitioned, and I think it's shown from a lot of us that our arsenals have gotten a lot more complete. There never seems to be a hole that I have. There never seems to be a gap where I feel like, you know, I just really wish I had this right now. I haven't found myself saying that hardly at all.
Yeah.
And the other part of it too that I think is a big help is that it's very simple. Our ball progressions, our ball chart, it's very simple. It makes our decisions a lot easier. There's not a whole lot of complexity to it, you know, where you have multiple, you know, brands and trying to figure out which ones work well and having so many different options. You know, sometimes it can get a little confusing, but you know, with what we have and what we're doing, it just makes things simple, and everything is very clear cut. And as long as they keep rolling out the ones that they're doing, and they keep rolling out the bowling balls that they're making, it's just going to continue to get better and help me stack wins on top of the one I just got.
I agree. Scott Wilbur is one of my buddies, and I talk to him all the time. And I'll tell you right now, he is so passionate about this sport and such a caring man. You're not going to meet another guy like him. So yeah, the guys at Motive are just wonderful, wonderful people, and I've dealt with them for decades.
He's never gotten Scott on the podcast.
And we've never had Scott Wilbur on the podcast.
Dwight, really.
I didn't even know you even knew him.
The problem if we get Scott on the podcast, and AJ knows this, it's going to be an hour show.
That's fine.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes. Talking about staff positions and sponsors, another one I see on your shirt, which is near and dear to my heart, and they're good friends of mine, is KR Strike Force out of Chicago, and Mike Stout and Brad Handelman, two of the nicest guys that you can ever meet. How important is sponsorship and staff positions for up-and-coming pros that are trying to get their name built?
Oh yeah, they're hugely important. You know, they a lot of the guys at the top, you know, we all have spots that, you know, sponsorships that are paid and everything like that. And so they help. And as guys continue to come through the ranks and continue to go on tour and have some success, you know, those things start to happen a little bit more. And KR was just the most recent one that I had signed with this year. And we had done some things prior. They started making shoes for Motive.
Yep.
At the time, I wasn't with anybody. So I said, you know, if you guys want, I'll I'll wear the Motive shoes and show them off and tell everybody about them. I said, hopefully you guys end up making a white pair. So this was before they made the white and lime green ones. And they're like, yeah, we're working on something. And so fortunately that year that I wore those was the year I made, almost every major TV show, was on a couple of different other shows. And so, it made a run at the playoffs. So they really enjoyed that, I guess, early exposure to something new. And then it just turned into a bigger deal with them and a great relationship. I bowl league with a couple of guys that work in the office. I've been college friends and buddies with some of the guys that work there for a long time. So it's very much like a family with them.
Yep.
And it's getting bigger and better. The rollout of the new collection line.
Yep.
Just announced a pair of shoes for breast cancer awareness in October. And they're still planning on doing more things going forward. So I'm very fortunate to them. And being so close to home, where their office is, they kind of have the hometown kid, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they do great work. They're always looking for ways to promote, whether that be the players, whether that be the brand, myself, they're always looking for ways to promote and get the name out there and do different things, going live. I do a newsletter almost every week. I didn't get to the one last week. I was a little busy coming back from Sweden, but I do a newsletter every week with KR where I type up a whole thing, and it could be tips for league, it could be tips for preparing for tournaments or whatever, or it's also just giving people an insight as to what I'm doing out on tour or what I'm doing away from tour, giving them a little insight into my life and things like that. And that goes, and they are all I got to do is send it to them, and they send it out to everybody that's subscribed to the newsletter. And that's just the things that they do. And and
they're great people.
They've done a lot of good things for me.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to also mention, Sparky probably heard his name, but Mike's, if you're in other sports, like it sounds like you are, AJ, Mike Stout's son is the famous Eric Stout baseball pitcher.
Nice.
Yeah, so he's been in and out of the majors, and so we're always pulling for him because Mike talks about him all the time.
Yeah, makes sense. AJ, I remember when, and I always tell this story on this podcast and have since this show was back in the day, was a radio show for a decade on Sunday mornings here on the station in Milwaukee. And then stuff happened. But either way, so back then I would always go to the World Series of Bowling and cover it out at South Point in Vegas and do the interviews as each person would get eliminated or win the tournament and so forth. So I got to know EJ Tackett right when he kind of burst onto the scene in the PBA tour. And I remember talking to him, doing an interview, and he said, I got a lot of guys that are probably as good or better than me that decided to go do something else with their life because they didn't feel the money was good enough on the PBA tour and didn't want to chance it. So they went on to do other professions and so forth. I grew up bowling in Kenosha and grew up bowling around a lot of really good bowlers back in the day, but same thing. Couldn't find sponsorship, whatever the case may be, never kind of pursued it. That was years ago, right? But where we are now with this Fox deal and everything else, and now seeing sponsorship slowly but surely starting to come on board here, like Snickers and some of these other guys, is the money now to the point where maybe we're getting to the point where the PBA is now going to start having these top bowlers not being as hesitant maybe to kind of chase the dream and get on tour?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I totally understand where some of them are coming from, 15 years ago or so, 10 to 15 years ago, where it was, the decision was, higher risk than reward. I always had wanted to be a professional athlete, no matter what it was in. And so when I had that happen and, I made that decision, I committed to it, regardless. But now, we're seeing, I think over the last, 6 years or so, with Fox coming on board, Brylow taking over and kind of going after, when Coley Edison was in charge, she went after a lot of bigger name sponsors that, we hadn't really seen before. Kia, Snickers, Red Bull, Manscaped. We had, now we have Guaranteed Rate. You know, there's a lot of bigger names that are being brought into the bowling world. You know, obviously you can always do more. There are bigger companies, there's bigger sponsors that have a lot more money, you know, that we're trying to go after. And hopefully one day they see the value in bowling to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're gonna get involved in that. But even with what it is right now, I mean, for the first time, and I don't know how long, all of our majors are paying six figures for first. The prize funds are being dispersed down a lot more than what they used to be. So it's a lot more advantageous now for guys to come out, you know, those top players in college, coming out of college and joining the tour. You know, we're seeing it now with Chris Barnes' kid, Ryan Barnes. He's been bowling a ton of stuff on tour. He was just bowling in Sweden. He's been traveling with Chris a few times to go bowl some other events. He bowled the PBA doubles event with Chris. So we're starting to see more of these higher echelon college players bowl more tour events because it is more advantageous now. They do see, you know, those prize funds, and they see the numbers and how much higher they are now than what they were, you know, 10 to 15 years ago. The Fox deal was huge for us. I think the biggest thing for us is viewership on TV, right? So
yes,
and in past, it may not have been as high because we were on, you know, as good as ESPN was, and it was cool to say, hey, you know, tell my buddies I was on ESPN, and they're like, what, seriously? So as good as that was, we struggled with you know, fighting with football on Sundays. You know, everybody watches the pregame show on ESPN, and then as soon as noon comes around, they turn it off ESPN and go to CBS or Fox, and we're bowling on ESPN. So it was tough to get that viewership, which turns into sponsorships, which turns into dollars from corporations and companies, because they want to see that viewership. You know, how many times is my logo going to be seen on TV?
right.
That's what they care about. So when we had to compete with all that, it was a lot tougher. With Fox covers a lot of sports, and Fox wants to have all the sports going. And so now we don't have to compete with all these bigger sports, so we get more exposure. I don't know the exact numbers, so don't quote me on it, but I want to say, like, there was a TV show. It was live on Sunday on ESPN, and it got like 1.2 million viewership. Well, that same show, fast forwarded, you know, 4 or 5 years later on Fox, got 4.5 million viewership or higher, five or maybe 5.5 or something like that. You know, that just because we're not competing with another major sport and we have our own time slot, the viewership increases exponentially. And
I think another thing that helps is the FS1 repeats. You guys never got that on ESPN.
Absolutely.
Like this past weekend, Fox, you know, FS2 had bowling on once again.
Right.
Absolutely. I know I've walked into some places like Texas Live out in Dallas, or Ballpark Village in St. Louis, and they've got multiple TVs going on. And one of those TVs could be on FS1 or whatever, and it's, you know, later on, and there's a replay of bowling.
Yeah.
And we'd never had that before. And so all of those things combined have, I believe, turned into, you know, where we're at now with the price funds being higher. We're bowling for a little bit more money especially on top, and it's dispersed down a little bit better. And I think going forward, I think they're going to continue to push the envelope with, you know, companies that have more money and trying to get, you know, the bigger names involved.
PBA League is coming up soon. You're bowling with the Las Vegas High Rollers. How excited are you for that format and for the crowd?
Go Pounders! Go Pounders! Go Milwaukee Pounders!
I'm stoked. Now, you know, the High Rollers have we finished second and third on our first 2 years as a team. So we made the final match our first year, and then last year we lost the match to get into the final match. So we're looking forward to capitalizing, especially since we are the only team to bring back the exact same team that we had the year prior.
Cool.
But I look forward to this event every single year. I love bowling with a team. I love bowling in that atmosphere. When you go to a football game or baseball game, you can hear the roars from the crowds. You can hear the cheering and the yelling and the bantering or whatever you want to call it. And we get that when we go to Bayside. We hear all that. We get booed if we miss a single pin. They cheer, for all of us, no matter what. They tailgate before the event. So it's so much fun, and I think a lot of guys really look forward to this event. It's loud. People can hear that through the TVs, and it's just you see a lot of things kind of come out of players that you probably wouldn't normally see, in a singles event, in a normal event. So it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it, and what better way to finish the year off with holding the Elias Cup with the Las Vegas High Rollers.
Oh, I don't know, man, because you got a bonus event out in Portland. You finished in the top 3 on the exempt squad for the PBA LBC National Championships. You're on that class shootout, man. That's $60,000 and the Duke on top. I mean, that's got to be a nice little backstory coming into Portland for you. And what would it mean to take that Duke trophy home with you?
I can tell you one thing. It would make Allie very happy because we would have diapers taken care of forever.
Yeah, it's a one-ball clash format too. I mean, does that change the attitude coming in?
Yeah, it's a different format. I haven't bowled in that kind of format, especially on TV. But I think it's cool. It's a different opportunity that Brylow has given us. Very fortunate to make the show for that, first and foremost. But it'll be fun. There's some guys bowling in that have a lot of success, or have had a lot of success, that are great bowlers, Hall of Famers. But some of them haven't experienced Bayside. And so I'm hoping that when we get to Bayside and we bowl that TV show, that true Bayside comes out and they're yelling and they're cheering and they're, getting loud and stuff, because some of the guys haven't experienced that. And I think some of us that have bowled there can have a little bit more success, and not get as intimidated by it, because we've embraced it. We've been around it. We've been in it before. So it'll be fun. I just hope that the people of Bayside and everyone there just shows up for that show and gets loud and is ready to go for that one as well, because it'll be cool. And I think there's some added, what's the word I'm looking for? There's some added motivation with the Duke Trophy being awarded at Bayside, and which is the place that Norm Duke threw his last ball of competition.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm getting chills, like, just thinking about it. Being able to hoist that trophy where he threw his last ball is just, it's unimaginable. How it played out.
We call Bayside bowling heaven on this podcast, and I believe it to be true. AJ Johnson, hey man, congratulations, baby boy. Good luck in PBA league, and I'm sure we'll get you down the line. And like I told you off the air, I'll get you some baby boy clothes if you need it. Now that you're moving
Awesome.
closer, we got you, AJ.
I love it, man. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You betcha. Have a good one. There it is. Spare Time Bowling. So make sure to download on your Odyssey app or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.